Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. Well, with the price of oil pushing $100 a barrel and renewed interest in energy independence, it's time to take a look at Governor Rendell's stalled energy proposals. But first, legislative update after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, before we get in, we're going to have John Hanger from PennFUTURE talk about Governor Rendell's energy proposals and get into some detail what's going on with them, what are the likelihood that they'll get past his proposals by the General Assembly. Joining me, as often is the case, is Robert Swift from Times-Shamrock newspapers. Do I got that right?
That's right, Terry.
You know, I always Times-Shamrock. We'll get that right after a while. But let me give you a pitch. Scranton Times, go ahead.
We got Citizens Voice in Wilkes-Barre, Pottsville Republican Herald, Shamokin News Item.
It's an empire up in the Northeast. Well, good job. At any rate, we often start this new year with a discussion of what's going on in the legislature. Maybe we ought to talk about this year as the year of the prosecutor. Does that make some sense at all?
I had this feeling on the the day after New Year's. I'm sitting in the Dauphin County Courthouse watching an arraignment of a priest from the Scranton area on charges he lied about his relation with a mob figure who's been long deceased. And I had a portent that, you know, this was the year for year of arraignments, being in the courtroom, possibly three separate investigations all coming together and determining really what happens in the Capitol as a result.
And these have gotten a lot of publicity. As you point out, there's the prospect that a number of people before the year is out, public officials in the state will get prosecuted, and some folks who have kind of interwoven connections with politicians. Well, let's sort of go through them. Let's talk about the one we've dealt with before, Bonusgate. Where does, first of all, explain what Bonusgate is, and then we'll talk about where it goes.
Bonusgate is the State Attorney General Corbett's investigation into whether legislative employees in 2004 through 2006 got paid extra money in return for campaign work that they did in violation of state law. And that is something that it's hit the Democratic caucus the hardest. They've had the most largest bonuses going to the most people of any caucus, and they've already had 7 top aides have been sacked or forced to resign because of their alleged involvement in that, as seen through emails. Now,
and one former House member, Democratic House member from Western Pennsylvania, already under indictment.
Under indictment for a case of ghost employees on the payroll. These are people who were paid for work they allegedly didn't do.
Did not do.
But that's casting a net over that has a caucus shaken. At year's end, House Majority Leader Bill DeWeese went on a tour of editorial boards and said, he's concluded that he thinks has grave concern in his words that some people did get bonuses for political work. Now,
before I want to talk about the other two, but before we leave this, so our audience understands this, our viewers understands this. This has some, not little, but important bearing on what the legislature does, given the fact that Governor Rendell still has that agenda out there he's pursuing, some of which, we'll talk with John Hanger in a few moments about.
The governor has this ambitious agenda on health care, energy, on all this stuff. You have the House already with the Democrats holding a nominal 1-vote lead in alliance with Speaker O'Brien on many issues. But already the loss of these staffers has, delayed action. And these things, if there would be indictments announced in this case, this can cause gridlock in the House, and make it more difficult to get things moving. Plus, it can spur talk of leadership challenges to Bill DeWeese.
All right, I want to go to a break, but before we do that, then there's this so-called Louis de Naples situation, not so-called Louis de Naples, but the Louis de Naples situation where he's a casino owner in the Poconos. And here it gets sort of into the priest, the casino owner, and the law. What a good way to end the segment. We'll go to break, and I want you to explain that and what you think its ramifications are. That also could be popping up as news of some importance because it involves the licensing of a casino to a person who there's allegations about his ties to reported crime figures. Is that
That's
right?
Correct. Yeah.
All right, we'll be back for another segment of Pennsylvania Newsmakers after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers with Robert Swift from Times-Shamrock newspapers. We're talking about, will 2008 be the year of the prosecutor and not the year of the legislature? We'll find out. At any rate, Robert, let's go back to the story of the priest, the casino owner, and the law. How does that all tie together?
This is an investigation by the Dauphin County District Attorney Ed Marsico, suggesting that, claiming that the state law was violated when the owner of Mount Airy Casino, Louis DeNaples, when he was asked about any potential ties with mob figures, he alleged into whether he lied about it or not. Mm-hmm. Now, this has been the first opening gun was the indictment of a priest confidant of Mr. DeNaples, Father John Sika, on charges that he lied about knowing the late Russell Buffalino, or had a friendship with him, And what this story was a top Associated Press story the day it broke nationwide. Wow. This is a case that has the most potential because of the elements of it to go beyond Pennsylvania's borders and capture national attention. Mm-hmm. And this also has been a case, one of the oddest, most extraordinary cases I watched, where in October the Pennsylvania Supreme Court actually at one point halted the Dauphin County grand jury investigation, put all the documents under seal, on a motion from Mr. DeNaples' lawyer, Richard Sprague, and then later reopened the investigation, or allowed it to continue. So you had that going on.
Right.
Documents unsealed in the case, which normally you would never see, mm-hmm. which were open to public review. So you
and I guess questions also about the Pennsylvania Gaming Board award of the license, which has now been called into question by some folks, right?
That's right. That's now becoming that whole process by which they awarded the license. You get into the whole issue of the way the legislative supermajority on the board worked, to award those licenses. All four legislative appointees had to agree. So this hits into this, and it looks like this will be a continuing story throughout 2008.
All right, well, we'll follow it. You'll follow it, and then you'll come on and give us an update on it. All right, let's talk about, we also have another member of the Pennsylvania legislature under indictment, Senator Vince Fumo. He was chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, not arguably one of the 3 or 4 most powerful legislators in the state. He's been the architect of scores and scores of important pieces of legislation. Gaming law, and as well something else, the tolling of Route 80 and the Turnpike, and increase the fees in the Turnpike in order to fund roads, bridges, and mass transit. Where does all that stand?
U.S. Attorney Meehan's investigation at this point headed for a trial, and possibly to fall on charges that Senator Fumo misused Senate employees. Once again, he faces a primary challenge. Right. So he was indicted a year ago in February, but even under indictment, he played a major role in the budget. State budget of last July, so he has, once again remained a major player, but this is hanging over him.
And that indictment has something like 139 counts.
Different
aspects of allegations about how he used state employees.
And he said he's in the fight for his life.
Well, in South Philadelphia, about your political life, we'll see.
Right.
I mean, wouldn't be the first legislator who's been indicted and got himself reelected, right?
That's right.
All right, well, as always, thanks for coming on. All right, when we come back, we're going to take a look at the governor's energy plan, given all this renewed interest in reliance on, ending the reliance on foreign energy sources. It's a huge topic. Governor Rendell has a very ambitious proposal. We'll take a look at that following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Joining me, as often is the case, is John Hanger. He's the president and CEO of PennFUTURE, the state's, I'm going to get you into trouble, leading environmental organization. You want to make that claim, or one of them?
Sure. No, I'll make that claim.
Okay. At any rate, John, look, before we get into the governor's energy program, which obviously the legislature will take up, and it's a huge issue that the legislature is going to have to deal with, I want to return you to your old days as a former member of the Public Utilities Commission just for a moment to talk about electricity deregulation. It's now underway in the state. It's expected to be fully completed, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, by 2010, and that will result in what?
Well, the best way to answer that question, which of course is very difficult because it's 3 years from now, and an enormous amount can happen in a week in the energy markets, is to look at what's happened to where the rate caps on electricity have already ended in Pennsylvania. They've ended in 4 places, and the results have been actually quite different in the 4 places. In one small community called Pike County, prices shot up to a very disturbing level, 70% increase, way too much. In the Duquesne Light Service territory, which serves the Pittsburgh region, actually prices are lower today than they were back in 1991. Amazing result.
Can you explain that?
Well, it has a lot. Yeah, fair enough.
Too complicated.
It has actually a lot to do with where rates were before the rates were capped. In Pittsburgh, they were at a very high level.
Oh, I see.
And in Pike County, they were at a smaller level. And also, Pike County had the misfortune of going into the energy markets 1 month after Katrina decimated the oil and gas industry and caused electric prices to shoot up as well. So looking forward to 2010, I think most people believe that, roughly speaking, we're looking at a 30% increase on electric bills at that time. Obviously, a 30% increase in one bite is a significant increase, but it's after 14 years of the rates being capped. And the electric prices actually in Pennsylvania are really a bargain today, especially when compared to what people are paying.
Is that because of the cap?
In part. Also, there has been some important efficiencies produced through the greater competition in the marketplace. Plants operate longer and better. Nuclear plants that were always broken down now operate pretty much all the time. The amount of reserve margin, which is the cushion we need in order to keep our lights on, has been able to be reduced, and costs have been come down for that reason.
Now, some experts say that, you know, one of the reasons is because we're a big energy producing state. Does that have anything to do with it at all, or is that just a byproduct? Well,
certainly one of the things that really is driving prices now is supply and demand. And the more supply we have, all other things being equal, the lower the price is going to be. And the more we reduce demand or cap demand, the lower prices will be. So we have to pay much more attention now as we go into a competitive marketplace where supply and demand sets the price to supply and demand.
And then one final question. I noticed that some of the utilities were allowing people to sort of structure in the increased payment so that it didn't. Is that a common practice?
Yeah, and that's actually part of the governor's proposal, is a phase-in period.
Oh, okay.
So if we do get, after the caps come off after 14 years, a 30 or 40% one-time increase, that could be stretched out over 2 or 3 years if people want to do it that way.
But your best guess is that even after the caps are off, when you take into account the fact that there were no rises or that the electric rates were capped, that the rates themselves will only be somewhat competitive because they were capped earlier?
Yeah. If you take into account inflation, of course, rates would have probably gone up over about 50% over that period of 14 years. So if we end up with a 30, 40, or even a 50% increase, it's not any more than what inflation would have done over that period of time.
I now have a final question. Look, this is an important topic. I hope you would agree. This is something that I think all the users of electricity and people who use other energy are concerned about. Can the legislature do anything about it? Will there be any pressure to continue the caps, and will that ignite a war?
Well, PennFUTURE and I am opposed to continuing the caps. You can't keep prices capped for even 14 years is pushing it, very frankly. You get all kinds of inefficiencies and
so
all kinds of...
So you got to let the market work.
At some point you do. Okay. And, you know, I think after 14 years it's time to do that. But the legislature can do things here, and this is why the discussion about energy policies is timely and so important. I mean, we mentioned one thing, which is phase in whatever increase may be produced. The second thing, and much more important than any phase-in that might be allowed, is to, in fact, get a hold of demand. Electricity usage is increasing about 1 to 2% every year. You can't increase demand and have prices stay down.
That's right.
1 or 2% in 1 year is no big deal. But 1 or 2% for 10, 15, 20 years, it's a big deal. We're on the road to have to spend $20 billion in new power lines and power plants just to meet the new demand.
And that's going to increase the cost because it's going to be passed along logically and...
Yeah, absolutely. And the alternative is actually to invest in conservation. Right. It is to, in fact, allow every customer to have the tools so that they could cut their consumption by 20%. Efficient lighting, automatic thermostats that help you to turn down the heat at night when you're in that bed and you remember, oh, I forgot to turn this on.
Yeah, which we all do at one time or another, right?
And quite a few of us don't get out of bed at that point and let the heat run that night.
That's right. Oh, I understand.
So there's a lot of tools that consumers can actually cut those bills by 20%. And if we do that, we're producing lower market prices. We also, and the governor's proposal and some of the legislative proposals, Representative Ross in the House and others in the Senate, have got a proposal to give consumers major conservation programs in each electric service territory. That would make a big difference.
All right, we're chatting with John Hanger about electric deregulation. He's segued into the governor's energy plan. We're going to continue with that after we pay a few bills. Back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PennFUTURE, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. John Hanger, the President and CEO of PennFUTURE. All right, John, let's, we've dealt with bits and pieces of the governor's energy program, since he talked about it last spring. And I think it's a good time as we start into the new legislative session. The legislature will have been back a couple of days when this show airs. Let's sort of talk about what it is that the governor is trying to do with his, $850 million energy independence program. Go through the pieces for us.
Well, the first piece is the $850 million fund that he would expend over 4 to 6 years, so roughly $150 million a year. And that would be money available to increase the amount of clean electricity projects in the state, things like solar, things like wind, things like methane capture. This would create more electricity supply, and that would help actually blunt rate increases or price increases when rate caps end. The second thing that...
Let me go on. Now, when you hear that, does that mean that there would be a fund that companies and universities and others could... Would this be grants that, or isn't the details of that been fleshed out?
I mean, the details are now really fleshed out. There's actually legislative language in both the House and the Senate. And all approaches assume a competitive grant solicitation process that all kinds of folks could put in their best idea and compete for grants to get projects done. Other states have these funds already created. California is at an incredible amount, $500 million a year. New Jersey is roughly $200 million a year. New York is at $200 million a year. They're very important to create these projects and to bring the jobs and the new companies and industries to Pennsylvania. There's a whole new way of making energy, renewable, clean technologies. And there's a race on around the world and in the United States to see which jurisdictions are going to be the home for these industries.
Now let me follow up. Now, the dispute in the legislature is not so much over that approach as it is now over the amount of money and how long it takes for each of the programs to be
That's exactly right.
implemented.
Yeah, it's over the amount. The Senate is essentially at $650 million, and the House and the governor at $850 million. The bigger difference is really over how long it takes. The
10 years, is it like 10 years?
The Senate is saying 10 years, and the governor has been suggesting a much shorter period of time.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years. I'm very much in favor of the shorter period. If we dribble this money out over 10 years, we in fact could waste a lot of money. 10 years from now, I'm hoping solar is a mature industry that doesn't need any support. Many of these clean energy technology decisions are getting made now.
Right.
And there's a window that's open, but it's going to close in a few years. So having a program that is designed to have half of the money go out 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now doesn't make any sense.
Now that's the huge umbrella part of the program. Would you agree?
That's right.
All right. Give me one other one, and then there's something
The second one is to get a hold of electric demand and try to cap electricity demand through conservation and energy efficiency at roughly current levels to avoid billions and billions of dollars that would otherwise have to be spent on new power plants. Right. We waste a lot of energy. We all know that. Businesses know that. Families know that. But we need to provide to families and businesses the tools that would enable them to, in fact...
Do the energy conservation.
Yes.
We have about a minute left, but I have to ask you this question, and it concerns nuclear. You know, there's renewed interest in our country as a way to avoid, you know, importing domestic energy sources, importing energy from other countries in nuclear power. France is about 80% nuclear. Now, I know as an environmentalist, you may be a little conflicted about this. On the one hand, you might want to see, you know, energy reduced, but on the other hand, about the concern about nuclear. What's your sense about where that's going?
Well, in the United States, there is renewed interest in nuclear, almost completely driven by two things. One is the federal government has put a lot of subsidy dollars on the table for nuclear, billions and billions of dollars of loan guarantees. There isn't a business in the United States wouldn't like to have the nuclear deal being offered to the nuclear industry. The second reason is global warming. Right. The nuclear power plants don't emit any carbon into the atmosphere. The real problem for nuclear in the United States is it's still very, very expensive.
All right. Thanks, John. Great update. See you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.